Today we're going to be taking notes on perfect squares and square roots. Make sure that you are following completely along with me, and you will also need a graph paper, a piece of graph paper, as well as your note sheet. Looking at our notes page, it says that on the back of this page we're going to use graph paper to draw at least the first 10 perfect squares, and then we're going to use the pattern that we noticed to complete the chart for the first 20 perfect squares. Now in 7th grade, we are supposed to have memorized the first 20 perfect squares, so that's what this whole sheet is about. So make sure that you have all of the pieces that I write down. Looking at our note sheet, it looks a little bit different than other note sheets that we've done. This one is pretty much making a giant chart. So we're going to look at pictures and then use the pictures to help us fill in the blanks. They've already done that first row for us. So let's take a look at the picture that goes along with it. So as you can see on my piece of paper, there's some really faint graph paper. I want you to go ahead and draw the same drawing that you see. So I just put a box, I outlined one of those very small squares of the graph paper, and I labeled both of those sides. So you can see that I have the 1 and the 1 for both sides. Now this is our first perfect square. If we count all of the squares inside of there, there's just the 1 square. So I put a 1 here. The next column talks about the dimensions. We're going to make ourselves a little note. Dimensions just means that we're talking about the sides. So if I look on the side that's going up and down, I have 1 box tall and 1 box going to the right. So 1 times 1. Our next box talks about the square root. Well, if we take the square root of that perfect square number of tiles here on the left, the square root of 1 is 1, and that's also counting our side there as well. So both of those talk about the sides. But you'll notice that since all of these are squares, we can just use the 1 number to show it. And then that last box is kind of putting together all of our information. So we put the square root of 1 equals 1. Now the next square, they gave us a little bit less information. Let's take a look at that picture. And remember that you should be drawing this on your graph paper as well. Now this square, you can see that I went 2 squares up and 2 squares to the side. So you can see right here, my dimensions were 2 by 2, because those are the sides by sides. And if I count up all of those little squares, I have 4. So 4 tiles make up that square. Now if I look at just one of those sides, I've got 2, which is where this piece comes in. And now I'm going to put all of that information together. So I have the square root of 4 equals 2. Alright, this one they did not give us any information, so we're going to fill in all of the blanks together. Make sure you have your drawing. Now this drawing, it shows 3 going up, 3 tiles, and 3 tiles going to the right. So we can fill in our dimensions 3 by 3, 3 times 3. And if we do that multiplication problem, we will end up with 9 total tiles. And we can check our work by drawing those dots on the inside. And as I count my dots, it looks like I did my multiplication correctly. I end up with 9. Let's put all of that together. The square root of 9 equals 3. So now that we've done a couple, let's go back to that vocabulary piece. The 2 big pieces of vocabulary that you might see here are perfect square and square root. And you need to know the difference here. So we're going to write ourselves a note at the top of our page. The perfect square is that big number. That's our total. Total tiles. Now on the other hand, we've got that square root. And when we see square root, we're thinking of one side. So we should always have a smaller number for that square root answer. Let's look at our fourth perfect square. This one we go 4 tiles up, 4 tiles to the right, and when we do that multiplication problem, 4 times 4, we end up with 16. So that tells us that the square root of 16 equals 4. Let's look at our fifth perfect square. This time we're going 5 tiles up, 5 tiles to the right. When we do 5 times 5, we get 25. So 25 is our fifth perfect square. And we can prove that by saying the square root of 25 equals 5. Now make sure that you have all of your drawings. Now you have a lot more space on your graph paper, so for your notes to be complete, I want you to go ahead and take a moment, pause the video, and you're going to draw 6 through 10 on your own. Alright, now that you have drawn your 6 through 10 perfect squares, we're going to go ahead and fill in our chart to match. So remember, our dimensions are taking the side times the side. And I'm noticing a pattern here, so I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. And really, this is just practicing those multiplication facts to find out our total tiles. So 6 times 6 is 36. So I can fill in the square root of 36 equals 6. Let's look at 7. 7 times 7 is 49. So the square root of 49 equals 7. Let's keep going. 8 times 8 is 64. So the square root of 64 equals 8. 9 times 9 is 81. The square root of 81 equals 9. And last one on my screen, 10 times 10 is 100. So the square root of 100 equals 10. And you should have drawings on your graph paper that match all of this. Alright, now that we've noticed some of our patterns, we don't really need to draw the pictures to fill in this information, but we're going to go ahead and use our multiplication facts, and we're going to fill in our chart. I'm going to go ahead and fill in the complete chart, so you're just going to need to pause the video, fill in what I have, and then you can play for the final couple of seconds. Alright, I've gone ahead and filled in the rest of my chart. Make sure that your chart matches mine before you turn off the video. In 7th grade, we are expected to know the first 20 perfect squares. So that means all the way from 1 all the way up to 400. They can show up on quizzes and tests, so we're going to need to make sure that we memorize them.